A girl, 14 years old, somewhere along the banks of the Nile 4,000 years ago. She glances down. Blood. In this exact moment, alone, there's nothing to compare it to. No pharmacy shelf. No search bar. No text from her mother. There's no diary entry for this moment. No cave wall bearing a painting caption, Day 1. Nothing. And that's strange, isn't it? Because this happened to roughly half of every human being who has ever lived. Every generation. Every civilization. And yet, almost none of it survived. So here's the real question we're chasing today. Not just what did she do, but something bigger. If something happened to half of humanity over and over for thousands of years, why is there almost no evidence left behind? Stay with that question. Everything we're about to look at is really just circling back to it. Let's stay with her for a second. Is she afraid? We genuinely don't know what she, specifically, felt. Nobody recorded it. But historians have found something almost as revealing: patterns. In community after community, anthropologists studying groups like the Jew/Hoansi in the Kalahari found that mothers and grandmothers talked about this openly, well before it happened. Passed down like any other survival knowledge. These patterns suggest many girls were likely prepared this way, through oral tradition passed woman to woman. We can't know for certain whether this particular girl, on this particular morning, was one of them. But if she was, this wasn't fear. It was recognition. So what actually happens next? Does she stop what she's doing? Does someone come find her? Almost certainly, yes. In most documented traditional societies, an older woman, a mother, an aunt, a grandmother, would step in almost immediately, not to manage a crisis, but to walk her through something already familiar to them. In some documented cultures, she'd be led somewhere quiet for a few days, taught, fed, prepared. In others, life simply continued around her, adjusted slightly, without ceremony at all. As a general pattern, how much her daily routine changed, whether work paused, whether she was set apart, whether nothing outward changed at all, depended entirely on where in the world she happened to be born. What almost never happened, as far as the evidence shows, was her figuring this out completely alone. Here's something that would surprise almost every modern viewer watching this. If this happened to you at 12 or 13, you're actually the exception in human history. Written medical texts from Egypt, Greece, and Rome, real documents, not guesses, put the typical age closer to 13 to 16. Cyrenus of Ephesus, a Roman physician, recorded it happening around 14. Greek medical writers describe a similar age. And when we look past the ancient cities into hunter-gatherer populations studied across the 20th century, that number pushes even later, closer to 16, sometimes 17. So somewhere between the open plains and the crowded cities, 3 or 4 extra years just disappear. Where did they go? Why the wait? Her body was running a calculation. A researcher named Rose Frisch discovered the female body won't begin this process until it stores roughly 17% body fat, because everything that follows is expensive. Iron, energy, tissue repair. In a world of physical labor and unpredictable food, reaching that threshold simply took years longer. But here's the part almost nobody talks about: why her body treats this as expensive in the first place. Most mammals don't menstruate at all. A handful of primates do. A few bat species. That's nearly the whole list. In those species, the body builds a rich uterine lining every single cycle, whether or not there's a pregnancy. Then, if there isn't one, tears it back down and rebuilds it next month. Scientists believe this evolved as a kind of quality check, a way of screening embryos before investing further. But that check isn't free. It costs blood, iron, and tissue, paid out over and over, cycle after cycle, for decades. So evolution added a safeguard. Don't start paying that bill until the body can actually afford it. Which is exactly why a girl doing hard physical labor on unreliable food, in a hunter-gatherer band or a Roman farming village, waited years longer than a girl today, eating a caloric surplus and moving far less. So her body wasn't late. It was patient, soft tissue, fragile fibers, a body that waits years to be ready, then sheds something delicate every month after that. Nothing about this process was ever built to last 4,000 years. This is where most retellings of this story get lazy. They'll just tell you, Egypt used papyrus, Rome used wool, Greece used sponges. like it's a settled list. It's not that simple. And the uncertainty itself is part of the mystery. Here's the honest version. We have direct written evidence. Egyptian medical papyri describing plant fiber plugs used gynecologically. Historians infer, reasonably, that similar material was likely used during menstruation too. But no intact papyrus pad has ever been recovered and confirmed. It simply didn't survive. That's the pattern everywhere you look. Rome, written references to wool. Greece, sea sponges, and a strange linen-wrapped wooden device called a motos that historians still argue over today. Northern Europe, moss that can hold 20 times its weight in liquid. And in plenty of places, nothing at all, just long, dark clothing built to hide what happened underneath. Notice what's missing from every single one of these. A surviving physical object we can hold and say with total certainty, this is what she used. Because that's the whole problem. These materials were organic, soft, biodegradable by design. The same softness that made them comfortable is exactly why none of them lasted 4,000 years. Which brings us right back to our opening question. Before we close this out, a few things the internet gets wrong. Ancient women did not only use moss, that was regional, not universal. Isolation wasn't always shame. The Jew/Hoansi actually celebrated this moment with an entire community dance. The Eland dance, treating it as a sign of power, not something to hide. And it wasn't universally treated as a curse either. Greek and Roman physicians largely wrote about it as a physiological event. Something to manage, not something demonic. Where you do see darker languages in Roman folklore. Pliny the Elder claimed menstrual blood could sour wine or dull steel. But that's folk superstition sitting right alongside serious medical writing from the same era, not the whole story. Meanwhile, in ancient Israelite law, menstruation triggered a period of ritual impurity. A legal and religious category, not a moral judgment, but still a very different experience from a girl a few thousand miles south, dancing at her own celebration. So depending entirely on where she was born, this same biological moment could mean quiet medical routine, sacred celebration, religious law, or some blend of all three. There was never one universal reaction, only local ones. And no, archaeologists have never found a manufactured ancient pad. Again, it decomposed. That's not a gap in the story. That's the story. One last correction. She didn't experience this every month, her whole life, the way many women do today. Later starting age, frequent pregnancy, long stretches of breastfeeding. Researchers estimate her lifetime total was somewhere around 100 to 150 periods. A modern woman today can pass 400, sometimes more. Same biology. Roughly a third of the lifetime experience. Back to the river. She already knew this was coming. Her body waited years to be ready for it. And in a few minutes, someone will find her, and she'll reach for whatever her world could give her, and walk back to the women waiting. None of it was written down. Almost none of it survived. But for nearly all of human history, this is how it happened. Women solved this themselves generation after generation, quietly without a single page written about it. If you want more history that never made it into the textbooks, subscribe. There's more standing on riverbanks left to find.